Hello and welcome back, and that is right, it is now possible in Synology's Hyper Backup application to back up a full system image, not just files and folders, but the actual layout of all your data from one NAS onto another in the new beta version of Hyper Backup. So you don't need to rely on active backup to do it anymore, but you also get to take advantage of all the kind of incremental and integrity checks that are built into Hyper Backup as well. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly how to do it from beginning to end. We're going to do a backup and we're going to do a restoration chapters along the bottom there. But before we go any further, you don't need to have me here on screen. I'm only going to be here for the introduction, so I'm going to go straight into OBS and just remove me here from the top because you want to look at what we're doing today. So the first thing you're going to need to do is bear in mind this is beta currently at the moment. I would not recommend this for live data, but nonetheless, if you do want to experiment or you're okay with using betas, what you need to do on the left hand side of the screen here, we're going to focus on our first NAS. This is the NAS that we're going to be backing up. We're going to be creating our system image here. So we head into the package center here at the top, and at the moment we head into the beta package area. You may be invited to confirm that you are aware that you're using backup applications there, but again, later on down the line when this becomes a fully fledged supported feature, you won't need to worry. Go in and click Join Beta on Hyper Backup. Now, the other Synology NAS that you're going to be utilizing, let's move this to the left hand side of the screen. On the second NAS, the one here on the right, what you'll need to do is go into Package Center as well, but for this one, we need a different app. We need to use Hyper Backup Vault. This is the storage area for those backups. So you need to go ahead and click Join Beta on that. And remember, down the line when this is out of beta, you'll be able to find these applications readily in the usual app area. So we're going to flick back over to our primary NAS, the one we're planning on backing up. And from here, now we've got Hyper Backup open, we click it here on open, or it will be now available on the list of applications. We go to it there, and we might zoom in a little bit here. I only zoomed out because we're doing the split screen stuff. From here, you'll see a new option has appeared, Entire System. And again, it's in beta. Do bear that in mind. Put a tag in that entire system box and then click next. And from here, you're going to need to find the destination NAS that you're planning on sending the data to. Now we flick back over to this one and we ensure that Hyper Backup has successfully installed. You'll see it now, Hyper Backup Vault, because when you go here, you will see the new icon appear, Hyper Backup Vault. And as you can see at the moment, there's not really anything there. We've got the settings there for how many tasks we want to run at any given time, but that's about it. And we'll leave that open there on the right hand side of the screen on the overview. So on the left hand side of the screen here, we can do a couple of things. We can enter the local IP, that's this number here, of our NAS, or if we click this drop down, it will scan our local area network, and if the NAS that you're sending the data to, your backup destination for this DSM image, is on the same local area network, it will appear among this list of NASes, and there's going to be 2 or 3 NASes listed here, and the one we're going for, as you can see, is this DS920+, so we click that there. Next, we can choose whether we want to use encrypted protocol. So this is going to be that the data, when it's moved from A to B, is encrypted. Again, you can utilize that, but it will slow down the process slightly. I'm not going to, but it's recommended to do so if you're worried about network packet data being intercepted. Next, the port. Now, by default, the port on the Synology is going to be 6281. If you have manually changed your ports, you can find out the destination port by heading into the network settings and finding out more about the gateways and the defaults that you have created, as well as going into a lot of your own direct access areas here to find out more about the ports and connections you've established. Remember, we're talking about a local connected NAS, not remote. So in my case, I've already left it as default for this, but again, it is recommended you change that. Now, when it comes to logging into the destination NAS that you're planning to use to send your backups to, you're going to see one of 2 things when you click log in. Now, if you've never associated the NAS you're planning on backing up with the NAS that you've are choosing to back up to before, if you've never connected them via snapshot replication, via Hyper Backup or anything like that, it will invite you to log into the NAS once again. So you'll go ahead, add the login credentials there, log in, and remember these are the login credentials for the NAS that you want to send data to. And once you log that in, it will verify that address and that identity there. If you're using particularly bespoke certificates, or you're utilizing even a Let's Encrypt certificate, or just no certificate at all, you may be invited to just double check that you have got a certificate in place. So going from there, you now need to select where on the destination NAS you want to send these DSM backup images to. Now, I recommend if we head over now to the other NAS system here, we can go ahead and create ourselves a good backup location. Now, what we need to do is head into the control panel, click shared folder, and create a brand new shared folder. This shared folder I'm going to call DSM Backup 1. And I'm going to place it in a much larger volume. Make sure you select a volume that's got sufficient space for at least one system image backup, or maybe more, but again that will make more sense later. But for now I'm using a nice big 12 TB storage area. Choose if you want to add the recycle bin, but otherwise click next. The next option worth bearing in mind is this one. If you're using more recent NASs that are running DSM 7.2 and particularly Intel or AMD powered systems, not only do you have the option of encrypting this folder, but also the option to utilize write once, otherwise known as write once, read many, or worm. And if you want to make sure that the backups that you are sending will never be deleted ever, select that option. Make sure you select write once, read many, because it will allow you to create backups and images of that first NAS, the whole system, that can either never be deleted for years or can only be deleted by a system admin. So again, depending on the severity and the importance of these DSM backups, you might want to take advantage of read once, write many. I'm not going to, but that is an option you might want to use if you want these backups for ransomware reasons, or for just system long-term storage you might want to take advantage of. Click next and you can take advantage of data integrity checks and file healing checks there in the background. But apart from that, click next, and you're now going to create this brand new backup folder that you want to make sure that the login credentials you used on the left NAS are now supported on the right NAS here. So make sure that that has read and write access. On top of that, if you choose, you can go for system internal user, and we'll save those settings, and make sure if you choose to make sure that hyper backup has access to this backup. But again, that probably won't be needed because you'll always have that backup. But it never hurts if you're utilizing a non-admin account to verify that, but that's not for everyone. Now, if we head back over to our backup NAS over here that we're choosing to back up, we're going to see that that folder's not there. So what we're going to want to do is log in again to refresh those list of, I've done the admin name wrong. We want to log back into this NAS just to make sure that it's refreshed that list of available folders, and now DSM backup is enabled. From here, this will create a new directory inside this folder where it's going to send the backups to. And again, if you already had an established connection with that remote NAS, you can use relink to existing task there. Click next, and much like any other backup task, you've got configuration options. So you can choose whether you want to compress the backup to save space. You can choose if you want to run it on a certain schedule. You can choose if you want to run it to have integrity checks. All of those can be utilized along with client-side encryption too. Click next, and you can choose whether you want backup rotation. This is when you'll do multiple backups and it will maintain backups over a given period of time. So you could set it up that your primary NAS here has a backup every single night at say 1 AM and then create a retention record of these, deleting over the oldest one after a certain period of time. And you can maintain lots of versions. You just need to make sure that you've got enough space on that destination NAS before you do it. Then click next. As you can see, it's now completed, but we're not quite there yet. We're just going to go ahead and click done. Now on the destination NAS, if we make our way into the Hyper Backup Vault, you're going to slowly see, as you can see there, our new backup has now been established. However, as you can see on the left, we need to restart the primary NAS in order to create that backup retained image and get the system ready. So we're going to go and do that now. We're going to go ahead and click yes and restart our primary NAS in order to begin the start of the connection between these two for our backup. This process should take anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 minutes, depending on the complexity of your NAS and the applications you've got running in the background. So I'm just going to fast forward. Now the system is fully rebooted, we're going to make our way back into our primary NAS. As we can see, we're just going to skip all of that because this is a brand new installation for this system and there's around 300 to 400 gig of data here. And again, I do recommend you secure your account, but of course, that's not the purpose of today's video. So for here, we go back into the Hyper Backup tool. Hyper Backup, as you can see, has now got the backup image of that DSM tool ready to rock. And if you want to change some of those settings, you can go into edit and change some of the rotation and scheduling tools as well as the target NAS if you choose. And in the case of the NAS that we're targeting towards, you can go in and find out more analytical information once you've at least started some of those backups. Now, if we go back into the primary NAS here, we can run our backup. We don't have to rely on the schedule. We can actually just action the backup whenever we choose to. And that's what's going to happen now. The system is now going to begin backing up our primary NAS in a full image of the DSM setup onto our destination NAS. Now again, the amount of time this is going to take is going to differ depending on 1, the size of the NAS that you are backing up, 2, the network connection between these devices. At the moment we're running this on a 1 gig network switch, and as you can see there, we're largely capping and hitting that wall repeatedly, or it's going to depend on the complexity and the power of the NAS you are using. So again, the amount of time this will take will differ wildly on the level of storage. But one thing that is worth highlighting is if we go into the storage manager while this backup takes place in the background, you're able to see that this is a NAS that's got 12.7 TB of capacity. However, when it comes to the actual data size, we've only got 177 gig on this system. So luckily, what that means is as we can see from the backup being at 29%, that you don't need to reserve a full system storage area of data. So if you're backing up, for example, 10 terabytes of Synology NAS in a full system volume, it looks like you're not going to need that full 10 TB of space unless you are using 10 TB of storage. But for now, let's fast forward to the completion of this backup, where now I'm going to show you how to restore the Synology NAS. And as things draw to a close, we're at 95%, and we can see here on the right hand side of the screen that the backup has completed there. So as you can see, the network backup has been established. Good news, right? Now we've got a full backup of DSM on this NAS here on a completely different NAS on the network. And indeed, we can go into the analytics, find out a bit more about source disk usage. You've got lots of little bits and bobs that you can use to find out more about that backup. And indeed, on the hyper backup side, on the primary NAS, the source NAS, if we choose to, we can change a lot of those settings as mentioned earlier on to alter it how we see fit. So of course, now the big question is, what about when you want to access that backup? What if you want to go back in and restore this original NAS to that setting there before? So what we're going to do is just to give you a quick demonstration. I'm just going to go ahead, and it's not much, but I'm going to go ahead and create a folder. I'm just going to call that test2. Now that is a folder I've literally just created. Do you know what? I'll go one better. I'll create a brand new shared folder, and this shared folder here, we're just going to let it go all for the defaults. And these are changes that we have made since this image backup. Hell, why don't I go ahead and install an absolutely tiny application just to prove that point. Let's go ahead and install something tiny. What's a nice tiny application? I'm just going to go ahead and install Synology Contacts there. Of course, it's going to have a couple of bits. So I'm just going to make those changes there and install those applications really quick. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through the process of restoring our backup, and we'll know the backup has worked because the shared folder, the standard folder, and the application I've just installed will not be there. And that's how we know that this DSM backup is a real backup here. So we're just going to let that do that thing in its background, and while it's doing that there in the background, I'm just going to talk you through the process of restoration. So on the primary NAS, you need to head up here to the restore icon. Click the restore icon there and select entire system. Oh, we're still waiting for that to finish its gig there in the background. Has it finished its gig? It's almost finished there, but what we need to do is click entire system. That's what we are restoring here. Then click next, and it will warn you that this Synology NAS during the restoration process will have to go back to the control panel to go via the standard restore options. Click got it. From there, the control panel is now opening up. Let's full screen this. The control panel opens up and the restore option is there. So if you've already got backups in place with active backup, you'll see them. But for now, go to Hyper Backup Vault, which again is what's on the other NAS. Click OK and then click Restore. So now we're going through the restoration process. From here, we have to enter the IP of that other NAS. So we can go for that NAS there, pop that there on that side of the screen. So we'll take that IP. Again, all we need is the IP number starting with the number 1. We don't need the slash at the end. We won't need anything else. And we've already said that the port we're using is the default one. But if you're not using the default port, just make sure you use that one and then click connect. It will now establish a connection with that NAS. But of course, once again, we need to verify who we are. So we're just going to go ahead, log in like so, and it will find that system image we created earlier. Then we click next. It's finding it on the NAS, and if you've created multiple backups over time, this is where you will see all of those listed backups there with regards to all of the different images you may have taken over time, with repeated backups. Then you can choose what you want to install. Restore all of the network related settings you had and enable, again, encrypted transmission when the data is coming back if you choose. I'm going to go ahead and restore everything the way it was. We're going to click next. As you can see, there are all of our settings. We click restore. It's letting you know that this data will be deleted. And for that, click restore. We have to put in now our local NAS. So this is the password for the local NAS that we're using here. Ignore the conflict of the model ID and the one there at the top. It's because we pulled some drives out of another NAS and put them in the larger NAS. But for now, you have to put in the DSM credentials of the local NAS system. Click submit. And what you'll see now is the backup on the destination, that remote NAS being used to restore our original NAS. And that's what happens. So what we're going to do now is fast forward for you guys at home to the restoration of this backup. Let's fast forward. Right, so we're drawing in on the final % of this restoration. Straight away off the bat, I will say this has taken an exceptionally long amount of time. That's it. It is now complete, as you can see. System restoration is complete. The Synology NAS is restarting. Not a tremendous shock there. But again, I will highlight that this has taken quite a few hours. I've intentionally left a clock at the bottom right of the screen throughout the whole of this process, but I'll say right now, this has not been a quick process by any regard. And this was only utilising quite a fractionally small amount of data. To put that into perspective, if we make our way into the DS920 again and look at that backup, and we look at the kind of data we have here, and just the amount of data usage that this image is kind of storing, this was only a backup of 138.2 gig of storage space there. It's not occupying much more than that. If we go into the storage area there and we look at our second storage pool, we're able to see right there that it is really only taking up that space, as we can see there. So if you're running a system with terabytes of data, just bear in mind that this restoration, although obviously heavily dependent on your network speeds between both your primary and your secondary NAS are important, nevertheless, this is really a very, very slow process, so do bear that in mind. Now, another thing I will touch on, I didn't really get a chance to touch on earlier in the video, is to do with the systems that actually support this process. Now, as mentioned, Hyper Backup is an application that is available on a lot of different NAS systems. However, at least at the time of recording, and whilst the Hyper Backup and Hyper Backup Vault application are both in beta, you'll be able to see that right now, and it's just restarted, right now Hyper Backup and the restoration option is currently only supported on the following NAS systems. And what you might notice there is a lot of pluses. You're seeing a lot of SA, a lot of FS, basically anything from prosumer, business and above, which is a real shame because all of these devices you see here also support Synology Active Backup Suite. An Active Backup Suite already supported Synology Synology System Image Restoration there. This is something that's already been possible with DSM on these systems already, and I was kind of hoping that Hyper Backup whole system image restoration would have been supported on Realtek based NASs, value series NASs. So as good as this whole process is, it's just a cracking shame that you can't use it on ARM or value tier NAS solutions. But we'll make our way back in. So we'll log back into our primary NAS, which has now seen that restoration. Let's log in there and let's see what we see. So as you can see, it's still showing us the same kind of you need to use your security settings as mentioned earlier on. But if we make our way into File Station, there is all of our data. There is all the data from earlier. The folders we created are now gone. They're no longer on there. Indeed, if we come out of that, we make our way into the storage area, the storage manager. We've got both the drives we had before. The storage is exactly the same. And ultimately, we have now restored this system, and we haven't even got that contacts application that we installed there. The system has truly been reinstated back to the pre-backup that we created earlier on. So again, personally, I really like this. I like the fact that we can reinstall DSM utilizing the Hyper Backup application, something I think is a lot less aggressive than the other one. And it's still very nice to know that we have this restoration option open to us. But just bear in mind, this will take extra time and you're not able to utilize it on less powerful systems in the value tier series. But apart from that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. There is a full guide linked below that I'm working on right now. Indeed, I'm writing it as we speak, and this is going through all of these steps, so do stay tuned for that. But apart from that, if you do want to learn more other than that guide, or you need further assistance, why not head over to NAScompares now. Notwithstanding that we do guides and articles practically every day, but alongside the free advice section on every single page, we are now utilizing Ko-Fi to give more direct support alongside Patreon for those of you that are looking for additional support and assistance that don't mind spending a little few extra coins our way and out in order to us to give you much more preferential treatment. But otherwise, you can always use the free advice section, use our Discord, use the free community support forum, or use any one of the forums and Reddit subreddits that we highlight for recommended support. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.